Have you ever found yourself always stepping in, always offering to support? Maybe in life, in work, and maybe that's a repeat pattern you find yourself doing, where you tend to overgive, even often times, even before you've been asked. And that comes at a cost. All this overwhelming responsibility that you have taken on, and possibly from a very young age. And the cost to those things can be frequent burnout, resentment, and just exhaustion. This idea of this balance of exchange. So when we overgive all the time, we're actually not leaving room to receive because we have made ourselves quite big in the situation. And this can stem from our childhood, where we took on that role to maybe please a parent, a sibling, a grandparent, or we saw ourselves, this was an exchange of love that we saw at home, a pattern that when we give, it means that we love. And we even have that famous saying from Mother Teresa, and it was something that I saw in my mother. It is, our love is in the doing. And often case when we couldn't verbally express how we love the person, we would give in terms of wanting to help and be useful around the house. So that idea is when our balance of exchange is off, and how that can impact in our workplace is we tend to take these patterns again into our work, where we feel that we are the solution and we take it on. And I would have noticed this in my early career, that idea of I'll do that, oh, I'll be the first to volunteer to, because I could do it, and I was always that one because that was a role that I might have had at home as well. So where that became a problem was I was overgiving and I made myself quite big. And again, this was something that I've spoken about before, but my balance of exchange has been off a lot in my life. And not just it at home, but also in previous jobs where I would have burnt out and I would have given, given, given. And again, not just in work, but in friendship contexts, even in relationships where I would offer before I was even asked to do anything, that I thought, yeah, I'm that person that can do that. So knowing that for me to rebalance this exchange, I had to learn the gift of receiving. And it's definitely still my biggest work. How can I let receiving in if I tend to overgive all the time? So checking where you had a lot of responsibility. And again, this comes back to a previous video we spoke about where you came in the family, potentially if you were an elder, or equally if you had an elder sibling that didn't take on any responsibility, that you stood up. You could be the only girl or the only son that actually cares that you are the person that does all those things that is needed or asked of you. So look at that idea of, if you're giving too much, you're blocking the receiving. So how can you really, really take the time to examine where in your life you might be overgiving? And again, it can start in work. This idea of, and again, I'm not a parent, so I will not, this is not a judgment, but I can see it with mothers where they will always put the health and welfare of their children ahead of their own. And again, from a place of love. And again, that idea of that's absolutely fine when children are small and they really, really need their parents, to be fed, to be cared for, etc. And again, where you see this later in life where those patterns are still there and the parent doesn't know who they are when the child leaves the home, because that idea of that was a part of who I am, my identity was giving. So that need to want to be useful, and then having to learn to right size yourself and also figure out who am I now if I'm not giving to my children. So that partly that identity crisis that can happen in midlife sometimes when the children get older, or let's say if the parents pass away, and you're also, we call ourselves that sandwich generation, where you're sandwiched into still minding young children and also minding elderly parents, and where all that kind of identity piece can really change overnight if there's a loss of a parent, or equally the children have kind of grown up and moved on. So notice where you are stepping in to solve something before you're even asked. Where you're like, I'll do that, I'll volunteer. I found myself even getting involved in things in the last few years that, you know, do I regret them now? Absolutely. Am I kind of tied into them where I agreed to help in the past because I thought, well, I know best and I know what to do here, and found myself seduced into the belonging part as well because when I'm doing and giving, I tend to belong. So having to really, really pull back from that. And then, am I right sized in the situation? Am I potentially playing too big here? Do I see myself as the solution in all family problems, or I'm the one who organizes the parties, I'm the one who gets things going? I see this in myself and I see it in my clients all the time. I have one client who recently said, again, older siblings absolutely don't do anything, but she's the organizer in the home. She's the organizer with her brothers and sisters. She's the one that organizes the parties, the family outings, the family going away, and she has a really high powered exec job. She has a big team, she's young children, and it tends to fall on her. And that resentment starts building. And again, that burnout and the exhaustion and all of that. And because of that, if she was to step back and just see what happens, there's a bit of a curiosity to see if she isn't playing that role. People tend to get pissed off because that's what you've always done. So practice holding back. Can you take a step back? And again, I'll say it before, and it's that Mel Robbins idea of let them. Just see what happens. If you're not stepping in, just let them and see what happens when you aren't jumping in to rescue or help or be a bigger size than you should be. And then I'd love to hear in the comments, both on YouTube and on Instagram, where in your life have you taken on too much, or can you identify with that? Definitely love to hear and share in the comments. We're into our second last day of this January challenge. Again, you might be watching this in February, and this was done over the course of January 2025. And for those that are following in real time, I have a competition live until Saturday evening where you can win a one-to-one session with me and a retreat place. And all you have to do is like, comment which video you love, and also subscribe to my email. So I'd love to see you over there. We've had a good few entries yesterday, but still room for loads more. And I'd love to get as many of you in there to get the benefit of winning this prize and potentially any emails and offers that I do once you're subscribed to my email list. And I'd love to have you there. So thanks so much for watching. We're on to the second last day, and thanks so much for all your messages, and keep going and looking at this topic in particular around too much responsibility and the impact that has had in your life. Thank you.